Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our Concord Housing Justice Community Workshop here today. We're so happy to have you. So we're going to go ahead and start off with introductions. My name is Raquel Ortega. I use they, them pronouns, and I am with the ACLU of Northern California. If you could please share your name in the chat, your pronouns, and if you're with a particular organization today, as well as where you're which city you're calling in from today, that would be great. And I'm gonna popcorn it to Dulling.
Hi everyone, my name is Dulling Shu, she, hers, and I'm an organizing intern with the ACLU. And I also wanted to introduce one of our speakers, Norlie Gipner.
Hello there.
And Norlie hails from Martinez, and she'll be speaking more later on in our presentation today about all the wonderful things that she has done for our unhoused neighbors.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll pass it on to Latonya.
Hi, I'm Latonya Johnson, and I live in Concord, California, and I'm a housing navigator for Contra Costa County. And I go by she, her.
We think it's important to start talking about values and our vision for a better future, right? Everything we talk about in this workshop will relate to these values. We understand some people on this call may not share our values right now. And if you decide to stay, we hope that you go in with an open mind and use this as an opportunity to try on these values and/or to learn something new. Also, if you don't agree with these values, we're okay to disagree, but please don't be disruptive of this learning environment for others. Again, please feel free to add questions into the chat throughout the presentation, and/or you can private message me or Dulling, and we are happy to chat with you privately if needed, or even go into a breakout group. So here we have our values. We say we believe people have the right to live in safety and dignity. People have a right to adequate shelter and housing. People should not be criminalized, punished, nor ostracized for experiencing poverty. Many of us will suffer some trauma or mental health issue in our lives and should not be criminalized or ostracized for it. And many of us will suffer a disability that may affect our ability to be employed and should not be criminalized or ostracized for it. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Dulling.
So I wanted to go over if anyone has heard of the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error is a psychological tendency for people to overemphasize dispositional or personality-based explanations for behaviors that we see in other people, while we underemphasize the situational explanations. So in other words, we assume that a person's actions depend on what kind of person that person is, rather than the social and environmental forces that influence. Meanwhile, when we talk about our own experiences, and let's say we experience something that's negative, we will attribute that to a situational factor. So we mistakenly apply this to people who are housing insecure or houseless. And a way to counteract this is to recognize how we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but we can also do that for others and consider the situational factors more often. So I want you to keep the fundamental attribution error in your mind while we see our slides, and I'm going to pass it on to Latonya.
So in Concord and all over the country, the problems we are dealing with are housing insecurity, chronic mental illness, and substance abuse. Affordable housing developments are not prioritized. Rising housing costs, increased evictions, stalled economy, lack of work, impacts of the pandemic, ongoing illness.
There we go. Perfect. Okay. All right. So what are we dealing with and why is it a problem? So sweeps have been a kind of a consistent issue, not in just Concord, but everywhere. And we know sweeping people living on the streets in and sweeping them in tents, and if they're in their cars, does not solve or help people experiencing housing insecurity and houselessness. And sweeping is expensive for cities. And I looked up a recent research document by the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, and they said in San Jose, they spent $8,600,000 in 2019 to sweep people. It's absurd. Sweeps simply repeat cycles of trauma and often throw away people's important identifying documents needed to get assistance, such as social security cards, driver's ID, and birth certificates. This can also include sweeping medication that people need for their health. Sweeps are destabilizing and make it harder for people to find and keep jobs, since they bring anxiety that their home and their property is going to be disrespected and thrown away. And imagine going to work and every time you come home, your stuff is gone. Even the current Biden administration through HUD argues that based on evidence, sweeps do nothing, and they want to encourage cities to stop doing this. In addition, sweeps make it difficult for people to be found in order to get connected to services such as case management and actual stabilization. Sweeps are also a violation of US constitutional rights and international human rights according to the UN. And just today, there was a reaffirmation by the Supreme Court Justice that Martin v. Boise, which says that you cannot sweep people if they have nowhere else to go, is illegal. Next slide, please. So housing insecurity and houselessness does not seem to be viewed as an urgent humanitarian issue. So there is no sense of urgency. Local, state, and federal governments are not doing enough, and instead they perpetuate the crisis by making laws that criminalize poverty and houselessness. And as we said before, structural factors such as poverty, racism, and unaffordability have contributed to housing insecurity, as well as biased judgment and stereotyping, which do not help people who are unhoused. All right, so for this next portion, we're going to hear directly from a directly impacted person. So if everyone could actually mute their microphone so we can hear Dwayne speak. And just a content warning, if you don't want to hear about this topic, feel free to turn down the volume on your computer. It's about a minute long, and we'll give folks a couple of seconds to do that if they need to, but take care of yourselves. We don't want to trigger anybody. Yeah, there's a content warning in this about suicide. So, and whenever you're ready, Raquel. How did you find yourself experiencing housing insecurity and houselessness?
Well, my girlfriend, my fiance, and my son made a suicide pact, and they both killed themselves when they found out I had cancer.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so that just threw me through a loop.
And how long ago was that?
I think it was 2000, I have a terrible memory. I think it was 2015, maybe 2017. First year I met Emily. 2018. I think it's 2018.
Wow. And have you been able to get any support, mental health or anything since that event?
I got a little mental health support and a lot of friends. I met a lot of good people out here like Linda J, Jack, and Emily. I was able to get housing, and then I got illegally evicted, but I got my own housing again. I bought an RV, and I'm climbing up slowly. But yeah, there's not too much support out here for. You get your hopes up, and then you get let down. You get your hopes up, you get let down, and you fall into a hole, I guess. All right, and so we're going to hear Dwayne speak about his experience with shelters, and then after that, I'll turn it over to Latonya. Shelter system and the continuum of care. I stayed in the shelter system, and it was a whole lot like a penitentiary or like a preschool. You treat it like a little kid. You know, I said, stay on your bed, don't move, and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? We're adults, we're humans. I mean, if I got to go to the bathroom, I'm going to get up and go to the bathroom. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go on myself, so yeah, not good.
Wow. So if you had the option to go back to a shelter, would you?
I don't think I would.
And why is that?
Well, there's a lot of thievery going on, and like I said, it's like a penitentiary or like a preschool. And I'm an adult. If I wanted to stay out, I could stay out. If I wanted to come in, I would come in. You know what I mean? And it's not like you're paying rent, or it's not like you're ward of the state or anything.
Right.
So, I mean, we're over the age of 18, so we should be able to do what we need to do.
So I want to mention too that this is just Dwayne's individual experience with shelters. It's not the same experience for everyone, and shelters are very important in terms of getting people the help that they need. It was interesting to hear directly from his experience at one shelter. There's many shelters out there. Okay, let's see.
I also just want to, oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I wanted to emphasize too with these stories, right? It's really important for us to hear from directly impacted people. And part of the process is to hear about their unique experiences. And also, we know that there's often a lot of myths. There's a lot of really pervasive negative messaging about people who are unhoused. And so we hope that by hearing an individual story today, that it can help break through some of the pervasive negative messaging that, you know, we often hear. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
And let's pass it on to Latonya. And Latonya, okay.
Muted myself for the video clip. Now we come to Concord specifically, and to some extent we will talk about Contra Costa County. I have been a case manager, housing navigator for 12 plus years in this county. I have worked with unhoused single adults and families who primarily grew up in the Concord area and had some kind of turn of bad luck. Some of these people are employed, some unemployed, some have past mental health issues or substance abuse, and we try to use what system is in place. But for the city of Concord, it's overtaxed. Federal and state require coordinated entry. It is a centralized, coordinated process designed to streamline voluntary placement into permanent and stable housing through consumer intake, assessment, and provisions of referrals. 211, an information line operated by the Contra Costa Crisis Center, provides information and referral, health, human, and social service organizations. CORE, which you call through 211, is the Coordinated Outreach Referral Engagement. Outreach teams work to locate and build relationships and trust with unsheltered individuals and families in order to engage, stabilize, and connect people to shelters and services. CORE is one of the 3 entry points to Contra Costa County's COC. CARE, Coordinated Assessment, Referral, and Engagement. Centers are 1 of 3 entry points to Contra Costa County's COC and provides a walk-in option for individuals and families who need to connect to homeless services. Some of the services provided by care centers include basic needs, light case management, and housing navigation. An example of this process, I've done it through 211 CORE and through the warming center. You go into the shelter, you can get a bite to eat, take a shower, wash your clothes, meet with the case manager, and they'll collect your data and do an assessment that enters you into a database. It's known as HMIS. And when the county has housing, they will call the individual or the family. It's used throughout the county and is a point of contact for all agencies to see what services members have been offered and to offer county housing, temporary shelter, supportive housing, and so on. If someone's number is changed or disconnected, or they do not frequent any of these systems in HMIS, they will move down the list. There is also a housing navigator that can share resources and applications for housing as far as Nevada and as close as Oakland. As a case manager, here's my reality, however. I make contact with 211 Core that only answers the phone during business hours. I'll wait with my member for hours for an understaffed department to arrive to be told that the only shelter available for families is in Richmond, far away from the only one stable thing that their kids know is their school. So parents turn down the shelter. Right now, I'm working with an 80-year-old lady who resides in our local shelter. She was born and raised in Concord, lost her job, then her house was sold, and she had to move. She waited on the list for shelter for 3 months and finally got called. It's a big adjustment, and now she is faced with the idea of having to move away from the only place that she has known, since there is no housing here in Concord. Can you imagine making such a life-changing experience at her age? She's paid her taxes, maintained housing, just never had a safety net or family to assist her. These are some of the faces of Concord's unhoused. Listed here is the one emergency shelter in Concord meant for adult men and women. It was recently remodeled in 2021. In addition to laundry showers, they also have an outdoor pocket park that provides open space to catch a breath, eat a meal, refill water bottles, and a kennel for companion dogs for short periods. Areas are also carved out to host sister programs such as 12-Step. There's not listed here are also transitional housing, family domestic violence services, and affordable supportive housing services. And there's a link for more information. In the US, housing is seen as a commodity to be earned. In Concord and Cocoa County, continuum of care, they try to attempt housing first strategies utilizing shelters. As long as somebody mute. As long as people are working toward goals, they could stay in shelters. However, this means that now emergency shelters are no longer available for others that need them in emergencies. Thus, there is a reduction in shelter beds. They do have some emergency beds, but I'm unsure how you qualify for them. True housing first would have people go to a permanent supportive housing first instead of treating shelters as such. We need to see housing as a human right and not as a commodity. Unfortunately, there is currently not enough permanent supportive housing for folks.
I know this is a ridiculous suggestion. How can we get, if we have market rate housing that's empty, how can we get that to become permanent supported housing?
Anybody?
How can we move to that?
It's a great question. I think you'd have to ask the people who have made that housing premium in the first place, because they're probably expecting to get paid a certain amount. It's a great question that I don't have an answer to, Judy.
I'll say I don't know the exact answer in terms of the steps that we would the exact steps that we would need to take, but I can tell you that if we organize around it, I bet we could make it happen. Finding out who the target is, finding out who owns them, finding out a way to put pressure on decision makers, right? To make it available. So yeah, would love to talk with you or anyone else who's interested in trying to figure out a campaign, or at least ways to even maybe pressure Concord City Council to get involved around making that available.
And Donna has her hand up. Go ahead, Donna.
I'm in.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so a couple questions. So you said that the adult shelter in Concord on Arnold Industrial Way, that they can house 160 adult men and women at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it says on their website.
Okay, okay. And Can
That's
up-
it's
Valerie?
incorrect.
You're breaking up.
Yes. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead, Valerie.
No.
I don't know where that number comes from. They come about 62 people to 2 beds at the Philip Dawn Respite Center, which is right next door, and that is for our medically fragile adults. So I would say we have beds for about 85. We lost a lot of beds because when they closed the shelter down because of COVID, they took the opportunity to reconfigure the shelter, and there are now individual rooms, which are wonderful, but we did lose beds.
So Valerie, can couples be in one of those? Can a man and woman as a couple be in one of those? And can a
Yes, couples, man, woman, no families, no one under 18, and we do allow pets also.
Okay. And is the Martinez Family Shelter, did that ever get back running again?
I don't really know enough about the Martinez shelter, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Great
the-
questions. Thank you.
And the respite center, what do you need to do to get into the respite center? What's the criteria?
I usually you are referred by a social worker in the hospital. They usually come straight from hospital.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, is this part of Shelter Inc?
No.
No.
Nope, thank you.
Great questions. And thanks, Valerie, for jumping in. Appreciate it.
And
I put my phone number in the chat if anyone has other questions they'd like to talk to me about offline. I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I wanted to touch a little bit on kind of what Judith said. Like Shelter Inc. does have their own voucher program, so they'll do a rental subsidy with owners, and they do have trouble like wanting landlords that want to work with the subsidy. And so like even working with private landlords to be willing to take that subsidy would make a big difference, because a lot of families do end up moving to Richmond because they take the subsidy. And so then you're losing still more Concord residents. Do we want to move to the next slide? This chart shows what in Contra Costa County is considered the categories for extremely low income and very low income. Now I'll turn it over to Darlene.
All right, so this image is from the Contra Costa Health Services website. It shows the 2020 demand and capacity in Cocoa County for the continuum of care services. The most important thing to notice is the gap/need column. So you can see that RRH is rapid rehousing, PSH is permanent supportive housing, then you have housing vouchers, emergency shelter, interim, transitional, and every single one has a gap of actual capacity. So annual inflow or new enrollments into permanent supportive housing is 30% greater than the outflow or people exiting out of permanent supportive housing, which basically means there's limited turnover from permanent supportive housing programs. And so people who really need them and need to like move into them, well, those people are still occupying them because the permanent supportive housing folks are not moving into permanent housing. Next slide, please. So within Concord, from 2016 to 2018, there was a 121% increase in people living outside. That's a lot. As we've discussed before, areas with the highest rent have the highest housing insecurity and houselessness, and we know this is a fact in Concord and the Bay Area in general. Next slide, please. So we actually took a survey of people who became houseless in Concord, surveyed about 25 people, and got 19 responses. 68% of those responses said that they were a housed resident of Concord before they became houseless. Next slide. We also asked them how long they were housed, what street they lived on. You could see people lived here for 20 years, 34 years, 3 to 4 years, their entire life, 8 years, a while, maybe just 5 years here and there. And then they actually list the street that they used to have housing on. Yeah. All right, next slide. It's for our Spanish speakers. Okay. Next slide is, so this is in Contra Costa County, people who are unsheltered make up most of the houseless county population. This is the same phenomenon seen around the nation. So the people who are not in shelters and living outside is increasing. You can see there's no 2021 data because of the shelter in place orders. They didn't actually count people, but the numbers of people unsheltered went up from 2020 to 2022. There was a 34% increase in houseless folks. Next slide. So as you can see from this slide, in the 2022 point in time count that happened in this, this year of February, there were 3,093 total persons counted. The highest numbers can be found in Richmond, Concord, Antioch, Pittsburgh, and Martinez in that order. And across the nation, there's also been an increase in people older than 62 years old finding themselves houseless for the first time in their lives. So the aging population is becoming a larger portion of people unhoused is a legitimate concern for the nation, according to the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, because that also impacts all the systems around them, nursing homes, everything. Next slide, please. Here's an image again of all the cities in Contra Costa County and the numbers of people unsheltered. Again, you can find all of this on the Contra Costa County Health Services website on their point in time graphic. And again, we will be sending these slides out later so you can take some time to look at them with references. So this image shows the self-reported conditions that lead to houselessness for individuals, and the top 6 responses. Those included argument with family and friend, roommate, eviction, foreclosure, substance use, mental health issues, family or domestic violence, and divorce or separation. This image also includes self-reported health conditions affecting folks that likely have an impact on their housing, stability, and employment. Not listed here in this graphic, but elsewhere in the report is that 10% of folks said their homelessness was related to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is really kind of heartbreaking. So let's take a deep breath in. There's a lot of facts. And now we're going to hear the next slide from Dwayne on how he tries to make money while being housing insecure. So if everyone could mute your videos so we can hear Dwayne, that'd be great. You make your day-to-day work?
I do a handyman like service next door in Facebook, and I make, I work for donations basically. I just tell them, give me what you can. And a lot of it's for single moms, and, so I mean, I don't give very much, but it's enough to put gas and to eat. Well, since I'm from right here in Monument, Four Corners area, they all knew I was homeless, so that automatically stereotyped me as a thief or no good person or a drug addict or alcoholic. So that made it hard. But next door, I got housing, so I was in Bolton Creek, and I started my business in doing handyman work. And that whole change just made me an acceptable person, I guess.
Was it using the next door
the
app?
address, yeah, having an address.
Oh, having an address.
Made me an acceptable person.
Interesting. And how would you describe your interactions with people that you've done handyman work for?
Wonderful, great. I get called back all the time, and I do a lot of free stuff, of course. Like I said, I help a lot of single moms and elderly people. So we're poor, so I know they're poor. So sometimes I work just for a meal. And don't profile us. We're all the same. We're just like everybody else. There's good and there's bad. There's beautiful and there's ugly. I mean, just treat us as humans. And we're not going to try to rob you. Or at least I won't.
And what would you consider your greatest strengths?
My friendship. Because I work hard at it and I hope they do too.
All right, thank you, Dwayne, for sharing your story. I'm going to turn it over to Latonya.
So now that we've identified the problem, let's talk about some solutions. In recent years, Concord Community Alliance has done a persistent and robust job of advocating for people who are unhoused at city council meetings during public comment. However, the city council has not done an adequate or quick enough response to help immediate needs, and we need to add some voices and pressure for Concord City Council to do more and with urgency. Due to CCA's public pressure, the city recently hired a community services manager to address homelessness. Ling Power is the new community services manager, and they recently proposed a strategic solution to be approved by the city council this past summer, which is the first step in the right direction. Some solutions that have been explored include community groups partnering with the city to create safe, sanctioned spaces that allow for access to getting basic needs met, provide for safety, dignity, and the stability needed to begin accessing housing and employment. This has been tried in other areas such as Eugene, Oregon, and by the Homeless Action Coalition in Martinez under the leadership of Nora Lee Gipner, whom we'll be hearing from next. And now I'll turn it over to Darlene.
Okay.
All right, thanks. So I get the pleasure of introducing Nora Lee. Nora Lee Gipner is a former city council member of Martinez. Now she's the president and CEO and founder of the nonprofit Homeless Action Coalition. During the pandemic, she started a project called Camp Hope, which provides a sanctioned safe space at the Martinez Outdoor Amphitheater for people to live in safety within their tents and get access to services. Nora Lee has been kind enough to join us to share her experiences on creating this space and what benefits it has provided. Please give a warm welcome to Nora Lee.
Well, hello there. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, all that stuff. Okay, so I'll just start off, going for it. Okay, so my credentials are I'm a former city council person in Martinez. Like Darlene said, I'm a CEO of Homeless Action Coalition. I've done a lot of homeless work, one-on-one stuff for the last 4 years. And where I started this whole process was when I was on council. My chief of police, I was very interested in doing homeless work, and my chief of police was very, helpful in getting me involved with the core organization. And from there, he introduced me to our homeless officer, our homeless, liaison, Rodney Brinzer. And our next project was to put together a shower. So Rodney and I put together a shower for the homeless people that happened once a week. But before that happened, the chief also put me in charge of doing a forum for the city of Martinez to educate the citizens about what Martinez is doing for homeless people. Because at that time, on Facebook and in the newspaper, there was a lot of complaints about homeless people all over downtown, in the parks, et cetera, et cetera. So we started off with the forum. We brought in all kinds of experts, from the county, the school district, the hospital, Loaves and Fishes, just Bay Church, who provided the showers. A lot of experts explaining what was going on. The forum was, standing room only, no doubt about that. But what it did is it really educated our citizens about what's actually going on. We're not doing nothing, we're doing something. And that stopped all the complaining on Facebook. That was amazing. And so the second thing is Rodney and I completed the showers, the weekly showers, which happened on Fridays. And we actually got together the Passions of the Street. They provide breakfast, breakfast burritos. The police department's there every week, making friends with the homeless people. The county hospital's there providing their gigantic van, providing services. Bay Church is there with their four-stall shower unit, doing great things. Our core team is there. Our core team is there helping people get into housing and projects, because I say, okay, Talia, I need Joe Blow to go to this and that and this and that. So that's what makes it effective, is they can directly relate with the homeless person at the project and get them going on something they need. Because it's very hard to find your homeless people on the streets, girlfriends and boyfriends, very hard. Okay, the advantage of having something like the showers. Okay, so and even White Pony Express now, White Pony Express has actually showed up now, providing a bagged lunch to take with the homeless people, could take with them. So a lot of things happen down there. From there, though, before COVID hit, I noticed there was a lot of people moving to the encampment. I mean, the amphitheater, and at that time, our governor had said you can't move encampments. Okay, not allowed. And so Rodney and we had a dream of transitional housing program, and I had a 501c3 at that time with money in the bank. And so we both decided that if I didn't do something about the situation as far as managing it, it would turn into an amazing bad situation, because homeless people without direction will provide too much garbage, needles, a lot of bad things, okay? And so I took over and provided what they needed: tents, food, rules, protection, safety from other people giving them COVID. We were very successful, never got COVID during that time. Excuse me, one person during the time. But from that point, during COVID, we had to transition into transitional housing program. Okay, that really did happen. Okay, but during that time, our partners were the county hospital. During COVID time, they came and provided medical attention and COVID testing every month. Core team came twice a week. Let's see here. Our county provided me with my toilets and wash stations. The city was generous to turn a blind eye to the situation and let me be there, and they paid for the garbage and the water and electricity, okay, because we have lights on in the evening. So we had lots of silent partners, okay? It was an amazing situation. And then as time went on, we switched over, like I said, to transitional. The only reason you can be in my camp is because you want to get out of that camp, because at that point I've added on, licensed therapist, money manager, weekly meetings where you're accountable for what you're doing that week. A lot of other factors I added to our program, which makes our homeless people extremely happy to have rules and goals and direction where they can be proud of themselves. It's just been an amazing adventure, okay? Amazing adventure. Even the fire department, our fire district, got involved with my camp early on to make sure I knew how to be their poster child for success. I have smoke detectors in all the tents, fire extinguishers every 75 feet throughout the camp, and a lot of other rules we accomplished, okay? Just to keep our people safe, right? But that makes us the poster child, okay? Because we won't burn down. We have a fire emergency bell. We have safety drills. We're really good at this stuff. What we have right now is the Martinez City City Council has put together an ad hoc committee because they'd like to see me move out of the amphitheater, which I'd like to see me move out of there also. So they're really trying hard now to, they've acknowledged the situation. They're trying hard to find a place for me to go to. And it's really all good right now, okay? It's truly an amazing situation. Let's see here. We even have Bible studies on Sunday at the camp. It's just, you can't believe how we have morphed from protecting them to now developing them and making them proud about themselves to want to get out and do great things in the world. My goodness gracious. One thing I want to say is, for instance, when you're homeless, to be able to get surgeries for anything is impossible. We had a camper who was blind for many years, and because he was at my camp and I was able to, well, I'm very tenacious. I was able to get the county to do the right thing, and he got his surgeries, and he sees now. He has vision, okay? We've gotten people, for instance, I have 2 campers who are very chronically homeless and extremely addicted to drugs and with mental issues, but they're regional center clients, right? And they would never get into housing. And we proved to them that housing was a better way to go. and we got them into housing with an organization called Meaningful Life, and they're doing wonderful. So what I like to say is we have proven to the world that doing one-on-one stuff in small groups, no more than 30, and giving this kind of love, it works. It really works. Yeah. Oh,
Thank
no,
you
I'm sorry. Something happened there. It was me.
Thank you so much, Norley. We really, really appreciate you sharing this information. I know that it's a huge deal, and we're really excited to have you share about all the successes.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And I wanted to add too, just a little, I remember talking to you about your efforts, and
Yeah.
I've learned a little bit about why it might work. It's that sense of belonging. And in psychological research, they say that you need a sense of belonging before you can start to grow, or you have to feel like you belong somewhere and you're safe, psychologically, emotionally, physically safe, which makes sense.
Absolutely.
And you
Absolutely.
created that sense of belonging, not just like services, but like community and accountability and that social connection. So amazing.
Thank you.
Really floored.
Thank
So I wanted to add to that too. What you proposed follows kind of what policy organizations recommend, such as All Home, which is a regional policy organization in the Bay Area that has actually been asked by the governor of California to give them recommendations. And these are a few of their recommendations. So they said you need to have innovative interim solutions for those who are unsheltered, which Norley provided. Relax zoning laws temporarily for people to park, for people to camp, etc. Provide county services at any interim location that a city initiates, and use publicly owned land and buildings for interim housing strategies. And I think exactly what you've mentioned is an interim strategy, because you're saying we want to get them to permanent housing. What is also needed are services that people can voluntarily participate in and not be forced to partake in. That's really important. And it sounds like your guests have that option. So we want to ask the City Council of Concord to provide more interim solutions to immediately reduce the suffering of our unhoused neighbors and to facilitate the improvement of their quality of life, as Norley's demonstrated. And now I'm going to turn it over to Raquel.
So as I mentioned, we've surveyed directly impacted folks on what services they wanted from the city. Darlene shared a couple of those pieces around sharing about folks who what folks wanted, and also sharing demographic information, how a majority of the folks who we talked to who are living in Concord unsheltered are from Concord. So we'd love for you to join us in asking City Council to do more. We'll drop a link in the petition with a petition we have in the chat. But one thing I want to break down is say that, so as we mentioned a little bit earlier, so Concord, right, hired the community services manager, Lang Powers. And Lang Powers, seems supportive of a city sanctioned site. So we're feeling really heartened by that. We're excited that we seem to be on the same page, but some of the pieces that we're missing around it are the services. And we want to be really clear here that for us, we understand it is absolutely crucial to work with community partners. Just like Norley was saying, it's community partners are the ones who are really providing these services. It's folks who have established, relationships with community, as well as relationships with vendors and relationships with, different organizations and companies in order to make this successful. And so with our petition, we are, it's really important to us that we emphasize the various asks, right? Making sure that we, first of all, at the very, very top of the list, have immediately cease sweeps, right? And City Council, and City Council has the power to make that ask, and it's imperative that we do that. We also are focusing on having a city sanctioned site, right? For folks to park and be able to set up, to sleep, to set up tents and to live. And then also working with community partners, again, to have sanitation, as well as food distribution and clothing distribution. And so, in Lang Powers' presentation, she talked about putting out, they're going to ask for RFPs for people to submit to work with those community partners. So we're really excited about that there's momentum right now, that folks are wanting to get involved. Everybody who's on this call right now, I think is a good indication of that. And it's really important for us to just emphasize that we very much see this as an opportunity to also lift up community partners and to make sure that we are advocating for the needs of the directly impacted community. So these are really the pieces that folks were asking for directly.
Yeah, and can I jump in too, Raquel? Wonderfully said. We wanted to mention that we got this list by actually surveying people directly. I went with Linda on a Sunday and we surveyed everyone that we could that was willing to fill it out. And we asked them, what are your top priorities in order? And so this is what they asked. They said, we would love to stop being swept. The majority of them said, some of them did not want to be in a safe space, which is fine, but the majority did. They didn't, they want to have safe parking spaces, sanitation, etc. And we also asked them, like, of the county and city services that are currently happening, what do you want more of? So we'd also like the city to pay attention to that as well. And again, things are kind of in order of priority of what people told us. So I'm going to turn it over back to Raquel.
Awesome. So you can get involved in a variety of ways. We invite you to join Concord Communities Alliance, some of our partners who helped us create this presentation and folks who are on this call. Shout out to Adi, Latonya. And we also invite you to join our, we're excited about trying to put together a group of the first ACLU community that is focused on folks living in Central and East Contra Costa. So if you're interested in that, we'll post some links in the chat on how you can get involved. You can also participate in council meetings in Concord. We encourage you to sign and share the petition that we've mentioned. Share the recording of this workshop that, as we mentioned, we will send out later. You can also connect with volunteer or donate to these local agencies. Homeless Action Coalition, Shelter Inc., Monument Crisis, Hope Solutions, Monument Impact, who tends to focus on housing more comprehensively, including tenants' rights. And we also found that the new community services manager, as I mentioned, announced this strategic plan. We will be following up with her as well as meeting with Concord City Council members. And so if you're interested in speaking with elected officials, we would love to have you participate in that, and we would be able to provide you with training in order to prepare for that and have that meeting, or join us for those meetings. So with the reflection, we don't have time for a breakout. And so I would like to actually keep us in a larger group, keep us in the larger group today, and just have folks maybe type in this chat or come off mute and share with us what the original questions we had, right? What's something new you've learned? Did you hear anything that helped change your mind about the issue? If so, what? And what is something you heard that you like more about?
Hi, I start, and I'd like to hear more about Concord City Council. I have been participating for alcohol and other drugs. We create awareness with the council, but for the homelessness, I've never been there. I would like to bring up the issue, not to talk, but to support you with the council. Thank you.
And Donna, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, this is all wonderful and this is all very hopeful. My question is kind of like, okay, so tonight's program is from Concord Communities Alliance, correct? Or is it from ACLU? I just kind of want to get like clear on what group is sponsoring tonight's program. And then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, it's both. And then Homeless Action Coalition is also supporting us with Norley. So
Okay.
yeah, we came together and we're hoping to build a powerful coalition, right? Like we're hoping to all work together.
Great. And so it's kind of interesting to me that I keep communicating with the city council, but I never, like, it's not until these groups here reach out, and I just happen to be kind of involved in an activity with Addie that I'm able to get invited to this. And so I guess I'm just kind of wondering why the city itself doesn't seem to be very communicating very much of this. And I don't know, maybe I'm just not on the end of that, or if you feel that that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I think we need to put more pressure on city council. I think, right? Unless they hear more from us, unless we continue to build pressure and power, they don't have a reason to say anything about this, right? Even though, right, they have taken some steps, and I'll say, right, the fact that the community services manager was even hired came from pressure and power that was built by Concord Communities Alliance. So like that's one step, but there's so much more that they can be doing. So that's my opinion. And I'll say, I think this is just the beginning of us really starting to build this power.
And so would you say from this group tonight, okay, the organizations that are listed here on the slide, that then this is going to be a group that's going to continue with this?
That's
okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Addie?
Could I just add that what we're gonna see upcoming under homelessness or housing is that the city, the last city council meeting and the last few actually been discussing allocating ARPA funds to homelessness, and they didn't seem to be able to decide on Tuesday. They were throwing 2.5 million. And when I said, well, we need 5 million or 7 million to begin to address the problem, Oberger said there was a match coming from another fund, but I didn't exactly hear what that was from. So she said we are going to allocate 5 million to this problem, ARPA and something else. And they have already spent $1.5 million-ish already last year or so, a year before, something like that, and of ARPA funds on homelessness. But again, we don't see that because we don't know where it's actually going. Is it going towards police sweeps? Is it going to just picking up trash? Is it just, we don't know because we don't see people getting housed. We think that it's went to CORE, where CORE is the organization at the county level that provides some liaison work, but it's, as we know, CORE is not 100% effective because there's not housing available, and CORE can't place people because it's not their job. Their job is to check on people and offer support and resources and then turn them over to someone else. So sometimes there's a disconnect in some of that process, or discouragement, because you can't count on every services to be well-rounded and to meet people's needs. But there's going to be money spent, and we need to advocate for the biggest amount and for a long-term solution, because part of the housing element that happened a few months ago didn't commit to a long-term solution. And so we're gonna see maybe just a small fragment of funding, and depending who sits on city council after November 8th, we won't actually have, we may or may not have strong advocates for homelessness. So there are 3 city council races in Concord. One who was unopposed, so he's won his election, and 2 others that are endorsed by CCA
Yeah.
and the
I'll
Democratic
say,
Party.
Adi, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
ACL, we can't endorse any candidates.
Right, this is just CCA information. And so if we're able to build power, build our knowledge like we are doing here today, we can become more informed in terms of how to advocate and push for certain policy and funding, you know, starting at the next city council meeting, because you don't want to wait for it to be on the agenda. You have to start slamming their public general comment time, which is only half an hour. And if you talk about the crisis every week, they start to get it or understand, or at least become so annoyed they have to start doing something about it.
Thank you so much. I know we're at time, so thank you so much. Elsie, I see your hand, and so
Okay.
if you want to stay on.
No, I just want to thank you all. This has been one of the best homeless, unhoused workshops I've been at. I love that you had people who are directly impacted, and you all, I'm just so impressed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And we'll send the slides, and the slides have references. So if you are ever curious where to get information, there is like more than 40 references to find information. And the videos, you can also take a look at your own speed as well. So
yes, and please reach out to us, right? If anything else comes up today, tomorrow, next week, my email is in the chat, and it'll also be in the PowerPoint. Thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody has a really lovely evening.
Thank you again to Nora Lee and Latonya.
You as well. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.